I never imagined that an ordinary afternoon could shatter the fragile perfection I had built around our life. It was a warm, golden day, the kind where every ray of sunlight seemed to promise endless possibilities, and I was idly sorting through our car's glove box before heading out for errands. My fiancée, Talia, had always been fiercely protective of her car. She never let me borrow it, insisting that it was her sanctuary, a prized possession she'd worked hard to maintain. I respected that, until that day. Nestled beneath an old parking brochure and a pair of forgotten sunglasses, I discovered something that sent a jolt of shock through my entire being: a valet ticket from a hotel, complete with a date and time, and, most damning of all, a hotel name I'd never heard Talia mention in our countless conversations. The ticket bore a neat little stamp indicating a valet service from the Lux Haven Hotel. I stared at it, my heart pounding, as if the simple slip of paper had ripped open a hidden door into a secret life I was never supposed to see. My name is David, and for nearly 6 years I believed that Talia and I shared an unbreakable bond built on mutual trust and quiet understanding. We met in college. She was vibrant, spontaneous, and unafraid to defy convention, while I was steady, methodical, and often more comfortable with routines. Over time, our differences balanced each other out. We moved in together into a modest, tastefully decorated apartment in a bustling city neighborhood, where our lives were filled with cozy dinners, morning coffees on our tiny balcony, and long walks in the park. Talia's car, a sleek silver sedan she adored almost obsessively, had become a symbol of her independence. I never questioned her about it, even though she consistently refused to let me drive it. It was as if the car itself was her private fortress, a place where she kept the outer layers of her identity safe from the world. I respected her boundaries, until the day I found that valet ticket. It began innocently enough. That Saturday afternoon, I needed to run some errands, so I retrieved her car keys from the bowl on the entryway table. As I walked over to the car, I noticed the glove box was slightly ajar. Usually, I never paid much attention to it. It was just a repository for old receipts, a spare map, and a few miscellaneous items. Today, however, something caught my eye. Tucked between a stack of parking brochures and an outdated magazine was a small, crisp valet ticket. I pulled it out slowly, my hands trembling slightly as I examined the details. The ticket was from the Lux Haven Hotel, dated just last Friday. My mind raced. Talia had insisted she'd been home all evening. Her text earlier had said so, accompanied by a quick "I'm just relaxing" message. But this ticket told a different story. It revealed that she had been at a hotel, where a valet had handled her car. A hotel. I couldn't reconcile it with her claim of a quiet night at home. For a long moment, I simply stared at the ticket, the printed numbers and faded ink blurring before my eyes as I tried to process the implications. Had she been out on some secret rendezvous? Was it a business trip? My heart pounded with a mix of betrayal, confusion, and fear. I wondered if I had missed subtle clues over the past few weeks, furtive glances at her phone, excuses for late nights, the way she sometimes seemed distracted when we talked about our day. My mind, usually so steady, now churned with questions. I knew I needed to confront her, to demand the truth. And yet, part of me hesitated, terrified of the answer that might shatter the comfortable life we'd built together. I spent the remainder of that day in a tortured limbo. At work, my concentration was shattered. Every minor distraction became a reminder of the ticket I had found. I recalled Talia's voice that morning as she texted me, "Staying home today, not feeling well." It all felt like a carefully constructed lie designed to hide something significant. I tried to force myself to be rational. Perhaps it was a one-time mistake, a misunderstanding, or even a mix-up at the valet service. But deep down, the evidence was undeniable. That ticket was a concrete reminder that her evening had not been spent in the solitude of our apartment, but rather in a place that I knew nothing about. When I finally returned home that evening, the sky was streaked with the colors of dusk, and our usually warm living room felt oddly cold and distant. Talia was in the kitchen, preparing dinner with her characteristic calm. I couldn't bear to confront her immediately, so I sat down at the table, the valet ticket hidden in my jacket pocket, and tried to act normal. But every time she looked at me, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a hesitation, a fleeting sadness, that made my heart ache with uncertainty. Dinner passed in a strained silence, punctuated by my internal monologue and the slow tick of the wall clock. I recalled the many times we'd shared secrets openly, the nights when she'd confided in me about her dreams, her fears, even her past relationships. Now, I felt betrayed by the silence that had replaced that openness. I knew I had to talk to her, but I dreaded the confrontation. Would she become angry? Defensive? Or would she break down and admit something even more painful than a simple lie about her whereabouts? The thought of losing her, or of losing the woman I thought I knew, was unbearable. That night, after Talia had retired to bed, I lay awake on our couch, the receipt still burning a hole in my conscience. I replayed every conversation, every subtle cue, wondering if I had ever seen hints of this secret life. I recalled the times she'd been vague about her evening plans, the times her smile would falter when I asked what she was up to. I wondered if I was overreacting, if my heart was playing tricks on me. But the evidence was undeniable. I knew I had to confront her the next morning. I forced myself to sleep, though my dreams were haunted by images of candlelit dinners and clandestine meetings at a luxurious hotel I'd never known she frequented. When morning came, pale and uncertain, I resolved that today I would ask her directly about that valet ticket. I wasn't sure what I'd do with the truth, whether I'd be able to forgive her or if our relationship would crumble, but I knew I couldn't live in the silence any longer. I prepared breakfast mechanically, my mind churning with questions. As Talia emerged from the bathroom, I saw a hint of apprehension in her eyes, a fleeting look that made me hesitate even before speaking. "Good morning, love," she said, her voice soft, almost tentative. I managed a smile, though it was strained. "Morning," I replied, trying to sound casual. But the tension was palpable. We sat at the table, the steam from our coffee mingling with the unspoken words between us. I reached into my jacket pocket and slowly withdrew the valet ticket. Placing it gently in front of her, I said, "I found this last night in your car. Please, Talia, I need to know what it means. You told me you stayed home, but this ticket says otherwise. Who were you with? What happened?" Her eyes widened, and for a long moment, she said nothing. I could feel the seconds stretching, heavy with emotion. Finally, she sighed, her hands trembling slightly as she took the ticket. "David, I didn't know how to tell you," she began, her voice quivering with regret. "I was out last night, yes. I needed some time away, to clear my head after a really overwhelming week at work." She paused, looking down at her hands. "It wasn't supposed to be a secret. I meant to tell you later, when I was ready, but I was afraid. Afraid you'd think I was? I don't know, irresponsible, or that I was seeking something you wouldn't approve of." My heart pounded, a mix of hurt and anger. "But why lie, Talia? Why say you stayed home when you were clearly out at the Lux Haven? The valet ticket doesn't lie. I need to know, was it just a dinner for one, or was there someone else?" I tried to keep my voice calm, though every word was laced with betrayal. Her eyes glistened with tears as she looked up at me. "It was just a dinner for two," she whispered. "I met someone, an old friend from college, unexpectedly, and we decided to have dinner together. I didn't think it was a big deal, so I said I was at home because I didn't want you to worry or feel left out." Her voice cracked, the truth spilling out in fragmented sentences. "I should have told you. I was just so afraid of how you'd react." I felt a surge of emotions, anger, hurt, confusion, but also a deep sadness for the pain she must have been carrying alone. "An old friend?" I echoed. "And you never mentioned him? You never said you were going out?" My words trembled with disbelief. She shook her head, tears streaming. "I know, David. I was selfish. I thought if I said I was with a friend, you'd assume I was just enjoying a quiet night out. I didn't want to risk you thinking I was doing something wrong, or that I was looking for something more. I wanted it to be simple, a dinner, a conversation with someone I once knew. I never intended to hurt you." She reached out, her hand trembling in mine. I struggled to process her words, feeling the weight of each confession. The receipt, the tag, the denial, it all painted a picture of a woman torn between her need for solitude and her fear of your reaction. I felt betrayed not just by the lie, but by the fact that she'd hidden a part of her life from me, something that, in our relationship, should have been shared. My mind raced with questions that I wasn't sure I wanted to ask, yet I knew that without confronting these truths, we could never move forward. As the evening wore on, we talked for hours, our voices trembling with raw emotion. I asked her about the friend, his name, why they met, how often. She admitted that it had been a one-time occurrence, a spur-of-the-moment decision spurred by an overwhelming sense of loneliness and stress. Yet, the damage was done. I felt the chasm between us widen, even as we both wept for the lost innocence of our relationship. We agreed to seek help, to talk to a couples counselor who might help us navigate the painful landscape of trust and vulnerability. I wasn't sure if our love could survive this fracture, but I knew that if we were to build a future together, we'd need to start by confronting our deepest fears, together. That night, as I lay in bed with the echoes of our conversation still resonating, I knew that this was only the beginning of a long, uncertain journey. I clutched the memory of that dinner receipt like a scarred token of betrayal, yet also as a painful reminder that honesty, however raw, is the only way to truly heal. And though I was terrified of what the future might hold, I resolved to face it head-on, with every difficult, painful conversation that lay ahead. That night, after our raw confrontation, I lay awake in our dim bedroom as if suspended between shattered trust and desperate hope. The heavy silence pressed in on me, every tick of the clock echoing like a verdict. I replayed the image of that club photo, the unmistakable tag that contradicted everything I believed about that day, and my heart ached with betrayal and confusion. My mind churned with questions that threatened to consume me. How long had she been hiding this? Was it a one-time lapse or part of a pattern I had completely missed? The pain was visceral, as if every shared secret and every quiet moment we had built together was now contaminated by uncertainty. Morning came in a pale drizzle that mirrored my mood. I sat at our kitchen table, the remnants of last night's bitter conversation still fresh in my memory. My coffee was cold by the time I mustered the courage to speak again. When Talia emerged from the bedroom, her eyes red-rimmed and her movements hesitant, I reached out, taking her trembling hand in mine. "We need to continue this conversation, Tal," I said softly, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I need to know everything. I need to understand why you weren't at home that night and why you felt you had to hide the truth." She gazed at me, sorrow and fear mingling in her eyes. "David," she began, voice barely above a whisper, "I'm so sorry for what happened. I never intended to hurt you. I was so overwhelmed by everything, the pressure at work, the constant expectation to be perfect, the feeling that I was losing myself, and I felt trapped. I needed to escape, even for just a few hours." Her words trembled, and I could see the raw vulnerability in the set of her jaw. "I went to the club, yes. I wanted to feel alive again, to remember that I could be free, even if only for a short while. I didn't tell you because I was terrified. Terrified that if you knew, you'd think I was reckless, or worse, that I was cheating on you." I squeezed her hand, though my heart was heavy with the sting of her deception. "I understand the need to feel free, Ta," I replied, voice thick with emotion. "But hiding it from me, lying by saying you were at home, that cuts deep. We promised honesty, even when it's hard. I've been trying to understand, was this just one impulsive night, or is there something more? I need to know what's really going on with you." Her eyes filled with tears as she looked away for a moment. "It was one night, David. I made a terrible mistake. I was with a group of old college friends. We went out for a celebratory drink, and then I got caught up in the music, the atmosphere, the sense of escape that the club offered. I never meant for it to happen, and I certainly never meant to betray you." She paused, struggling to continue. "I felt so guilty the next morning that I told you I was home. I didn't know how to tell you the truth because I was afraid of losing you." My mind reeled with a torrent of conflicting emotions. I remembered the countless times we had built our lives on shared secrets and open confessions, the quiet evenings when we'd reveal our hopes, the times we've comforted each other through heartbreaks. And now this, a single night of recklessness that had unraveled the fabric of our trust. "Talia," I said slowly, "if you felt alone or needed a break, you should have talked to me. I would have supported you. I might not have understood right away, but I'd rather face the truth together than have you hide parts of yourself from me." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing softly. "I know, David. I was so scared. I felt trapped by everything, my work, my responsibilities, even the pressure of our future together. I've always felt like I had to be perfect, and I was so afraid that if I showed any weakness, you'd see me differently. I thought if I pretended nothing happened, maybe I could keep that perfect image intact. But I see now that it only pushed you away." She lifted her tearful eyes to mine, her voice raw with remorse. "I love you, and I never wanted to hurt you. I needed that one night to breathe." I sat there, feeling a mix of anger, sorrow, and a reluctant understanding. I knew that love isn't always as clean as we'd like it to be, and that people sometimes do foolish things under immense pressure. But the lie itself, pretending to be at home, felt like a breach of the sacred trust we had nurtured over years. "I'm hurt, Ta," I admitted, "but I want to help you, not push you away. I want us to face these feelings together. I need you to promise me that, from now on, no matter how scared you feel or how much pressure you're under, you'll be honest with me." She nodded vigorously, reaching out to clasp my hand. "I promise, David. I'm so sorry for everything. I'll never hide something like this again." Her voice was a fragile mix of determination and regret. "I want us to be able to talk about everything, the good and the bad. I don't want secrets between us ever again." In the following days, we set about trying to rebuild what had been broken. We agreed to attend couples therapy with a gentle counselor named Dr. Murrin, whose empathetic approach helped us navigate our raw emotions. In our sessions, I confessed that the image of you laughing in that club, the tag that clearly said Talia at Club Neon, had felt like a betrayal of everything we'd built. I described the cold emptiness that followed the discovery and how it made me question my worth, our shared history, and even our future together. Talia, with tears in her eyes, explained that she had been battling a deep-seated loneliness, one that she hadn't dared to share because she feared it would be seen as weakness. She admitted that she had always felt pressure to be the perfect partner, and that sometimes, when the weight became too much, she sought solace in fleeting moments of abandon, even if only for an evening. Dr. Murrin encouraged us to examine not only the actions of that one night, but the underlying patterns that had led to it. "Sometimes," she said in one session, "the need to escape is a symptom of something deeper. It might be work-related stress, unresolved grief, or a feeling of isolation. It's important to address those feelings directly, rather than letting them fester and manifest in behavior that can hurt the ones we love." Through these sessions, I began to understand that Talia's actions weren't a calculated betrayal, but rather a desperate cry for help, a misguided attempt to find a moment of release amid overwhelming pressure. We began to incorporate small rituals into our daily routine to ensure open communication. Every evening, we set aside time without phones or distractions to talk about our day, our feelings, and even our fears. I learned to ask questions gently: "How did you really feel tonight?" And Talia, in turn, started to reveal more about her inner struggles. Over time, the memory of that club photo became less of a weapon and more of a painful reminder of a turning point in our relationship, a moment that forced us to confront our vulnerabilities head-on. Yet, rebuilding trust wasn't linear. There were nights when I would wake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, wondering if Talia was hiding something else. Each time, I would find her awake, sometimes reading, sometimes silently gazing at the ceiling, lost in thought. I learned to talk to her during those moments instead of retreating into silence. "I'm here, Ta," I'd say, voice soft. "I want to understand you, even the parts that scare me." Slowly, she began to share bits and pieces, her anxiety about career pressures, her fear of not living up to expectations, and the isolation she sometimes felt despite our togetherness. One particularly poignant evening, we sat on our apartment's balcony as the sun dipped below the skyline. The gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine from a nearby garden, and for a while, the world felt calm. I looked at her, searching for the woman I'd fallen in love with, the one who once laughed without restraint and shared her dreams without hesitation. "I still feel wounded by that night," I admitted, "but I also see that it came from a place of deep hurt. I want us to be more honest, even if it means admitting things that are hard. I don't want secrets between us." Talia's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she replied, "I promise, David. I'm done hiding. I realize now that our love deserves the truth, no matter how painful it might be." In that moment, the heaviness began to lift, replaced by a tentative hope that we could forge a new beginning together. Our journey wasn't without setbacks. There were days when anger would flare, when I'd question every little detail of her schedule, or when I'd struggle to believe that she was truly over her need to escape. At times, I even wondered if I was being too harsh, if my own fears were distorting the reality of her actions. But every time we talked, every time she bared a piece of her soul, I felt the gap between us narrow. We learned that vulnerability, though terrifying, was the cornerstone of trust. I gradually let go of the need to constantly monitor her, trusting that our commitment to open communication would carry us through. In one session with Dr. Murrin, we were asked to write down our biggest fears about our relationship. I scribbled on a piece of paper: fear of betrayal, fear of secrets, fear of not being enough. Talia wrote, fear of judgment, fear of being alone with my past, fear of losing the one I love. When we read our lists together, the parallel pain was undeniable. It became clear that both of us were suffering from the burden of unspoken fears. That exercise was a turning point. It allowed us to see that our insecurities were not mutually exclusive, but interconnected, and that if we could confront them together, we might finally find a way to heal. As weeks turned into months, our new habits began to reshape our lives. We started taking weekend trips together, short drives to nearby lakes, spontaneous walks in the city, and these outings became opportunities to celebrate our renewed commitment. One crisp autumn morning, as we sat by a lake watching the mist roll off the water, I turned to Talia and said, "I want to believe that night was a mistake, a moment of weakness that doesn't define us." She squeezed my hand, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and hope. "It was a mistake, David," she replied softly. "One that I promise I'll never repeat. I'm here, and I want us to be a team, sharing everything, even the hard parts." Our friends noticed the subtle change in our dynamic. There was an unspoken understanding in the way we looked at each other, a gentle reassurance that we were no longer hiding behind half-truths. We even started planning for the future, a small house in the suburbs, perhaps a family one day, and even a joint venture in a creative project that blended my design skills with her marketing flair. The dark shadow of that club photo, which had once seemed like the end of our world, was slowly being replaced by the light of honest communication and mutual forgiveness. In the quiet moments of reflection that now punctuated our days, I often recalled the raw pain of that night and the subsequent long hours of tearful conversation. I remembered how every whispered apology and every shared confession had brought us closer, teaching me that trust, though fragile, could be rebuilt with time, effort, and a commitment to transparency. I learned that even when the truth hurts like 1,000 needles, it also has the power to mend broken hearts and forge bonds that are stronger for having weathered the storm. By the time our anniversary rolled around, a modest celebration at our favorite little restaurant where we first met, I felt a cautious optimism. I looked at Talia, whose eyes no longer held the guarded sorrow of the past but a warm, sincere glimmer of openness, and I realized that despite everything, I still loved her deeply. The journey had been long, fraught with difficult conversations and painful revelations, but it had also been transformative. We had discovered that true love wasn't about a perfect, unblemished past. It was about embracing our vulnerabilities, confronting our mistakes, and choosing each other even when the truth was hard to bear. That anniversary, we made a promise to continue our commitment to honesty. Over a quiet dinner lit by candlelight, no secret receipts, no hidden tags, we vowed to always share our fears, our joys, and even our missteps. I promised that I would work on my tendency to jump to conclusions, and she vowed to never again hide the parts of her life that mattered. In that gentle, heartfelt exchange, I felt our bond solidify, transforming the scars of betrayal into markers of resilience and growth. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything that has transpired, I understand that our love is not a flawless, unchanging entity. It is a living, breathing thing that evolves with us. The memory of that club photo, once a symbol of deception, now serves as a reminder of how far we've come and how much we're willing to fight for our relationship. I know there will be challenges in the future, moments when old insecurities resurface or when life's pressures threaten to pull us apart. But I also know that if we continue to share our truths, no matter how painful, we can overcome anything together. Our story is not one of perfect bliss, but of hard-won victories, the kind that come from confronting our deepest fears and emerging on the other side, scarred yet stronger. And as I hold Talia's hand now, in the soft glow of our shared future, I know that honesty, no matter how painful, is the only foundation on which love can truly stand. No matter what secrets may try to creep in again, we have learned that the light of truth will always guide us back to each other.